The Hawaii Sports Radio Network on 95.1 FM and AM 760 presents Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ule Agbayani.
Good morning, beautiful people. It's Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ule Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and just as promised, a very special Thursday edition of Wake Up in the Den as we have the one, the only Director of Recruiting for the University of Hawai'i football program, Savannah Reier. Savannah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so much for making the time. I hope we didn't kind of put a wrench into any of your busy work girl life.
You're all good.
All right. So this show, I know I was asked like, all right, what do you guys, what time is she coming on? What are you guys going to talk about? You know, I just want to schedule the exact time she's going to come on. I'm like, the entire hour of the show, we're going to talk more than just University of Hawai'i football. In fact, we'll probably get into it later in the show. This is more of a, hey, let's get to know Savannah Reier, because not only are you within the football program now, but you are also have been here for a while, playing at the University of Hawai'i for the women's basketball team and then working on Coach Beeman's staff. And now you're here, but we're going to rewind, go all the way back, and born in Jacksonville, Florida, but hometown is Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So just tell us a little bit about your childhood and what took you from Jacksonville to Alabama and growing up in Tuscaloosa.
Gotcha. So like you said, I was born in Jacksonville, Florida. I ended up moving to Tuscaloosa, Alabama because my dad works in sports. He actually covers Alabama football and works in sports media. So we ended up moving there for a job for him and just stayed there ever since. I ended up going to school, JUCO there as well. So I spent a lot of time in Tuscaloosa, so I tend to claim it as my hometown. But yeah, that's kind of how I got there.
So tell us a little bit about, growing up with essentially a sports dad. Like I kind of picture you almost like Remember the Titans, like that, the daughter of the coach that's like going crazy at the football games and knows all the rules. Is that kind of similar to your childhood? And Alabama's like, everyone loves Alabama football there. So is that similar? Am I on base there?
Yeah, you're pretty close. My dad coached football and then played football in college. He was a kicker, so that comes into play a little bit later in my athletic journey. But he definitely was kind of the person that spearheaded my athletic career, and I'm super thankful for that because obviously wouldn't be here without him and that support as just a young female in sports. So very thankful for him. I think he's listening. Shout out, Dad.
Shout out, Dad. And shout out, Mom.
And Mom.
Of course. Mom
Strong
is important
woman.
too. Yes.
Yep.
How many siblings do you have?
I have two. I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Oh, middle child. How
Yep.
is that? How is that then, being the middle child? And did your brother kind of like bully you a little bit or make you tougher maybe?
I think being a middle child explains a lot as to how I'm here. But my older brother was super sweet. Like, he's not really the guy that would like beat you up. He definitely pulled some WWE moves on me back in the day. So I definitely think that built character. But I was kind of always the really competitive, like, would just give it right back kind of kid. So he definitely helped me too, but he wasn't too much.
And then so you played basketball collegiately, played multiple sports. Tell everyone a little bit about what you grew up playing. Was basketball your first sport that you played, or did you maybe dabble in something else first? Like, soccer is my sport, but it wasn't the first thing I started off with. I think I started off with volleyball, and that didn't last very long. Once I found soccer, it was like, I'm all in on soccer. So did you play something else before kind of fully committing to basketball when you were a kid?
Yeah, so I played basketball and soccer kind of simultaneously, starting in kindergarten. I was playing at a super young age, and then I kind of took a break, did gymnastics in like the 3rd grade, fell off the bars one time, and the coach told me, give me 20 push-ups, and I was like, I quit. I really like the team-oriented sports, so I stuck with basketball soccer and then eventually football throughout my high school career.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. So football, it's in your bio on the University of Hawaii page. I believe more so when you were a player, that in high school at Northridge High, you did play soccer all 4 years, and then you played a season of each of softball and lacrosse. But probably the biggest thing that stands out to me is that you were the kicker on the football team. Tell me how that came about.
Yeah, so I actually had played for 2 years prior. We lived in South Carolina. It's kind of a weird time because a lot of people don't know that I lived in South Carolina, but I lived there for a couple years actually, and that's where I started kicking at Hilton Head High School. So I started there. I wanted a break from AAU basketball and club soccer because, like I said, I had been playing from kindergarten. So I was like, I need something different. I had tried softball, too slow. Lacrosse was really fun, but I didn't see myself long term, like wanting to play it. And so my dad was like, hey, let's go out to the football field and just try to kick. And of course, he gets his camera out and I nail like a 38-yarder immediately, just soccer background. And he posted on Facebook, and the next day, the head football coach comes up to me at school and he's like, hey, do you want to try out? And I was like, okay, this is happening fast, but yes, I'll try out. The next day I was in pads and like kicking to see if I could kick with pads on. So I started there, and then my senior year we moved, or middle of my junior year, technically, we moved back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I played soccer that season, and then the football coach was having sign-up tryouts in the lunchroom, and I walk up to him and I was like, hey, like I've played 2 years of varsity football, like I can kick. And he was like, you're gonna have to try out. Like I don't know if that's gonna work. And I go out to tryouts and hit every kick I took, and he was like, I think we can make a spot, knowing that they didn't have a kicker. But he ended up being very influential in my life as a coach and just as a person. So very thankful that I got the opportunity at both schools to be able to do that.
I was just about to ask if you even had to like compete against anybody and how that went, but I guess it's hard to come by with kickers these days. So you scored actually and did really well, 100 points. I mean, that's pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I always joke with my boyfriend Logan. He played football for 1 year, and he's like, I scored a touchdown, and then he got injured, and I was like, I scored more points than you in my high school career. Too competitive.
That's actually the best thing to say, right? Like, I can one-up you. Like, just because I was a kicker, I still technically scored more points than you. That's awesome. And so how was that, though, being kind of surrounded by just a bunch of boys? Like, did your dad, because I think my dad, like, I begged him to go out and be a kicker for the team, but I think back then he was just worried about, oh my gosh, my daughter is going to be around like all these boys, and then so how was that, just being surrounded by, and because it's not like playing basketball where it's just a small amount of guys, but for football you're around all these guys. How was that, and how did you kind of deal with that as the only girl surrounded by all of them?
Yeah, I think at first I was a little bit nervous, but then I realized that the environment was actually very similar to my personality. I'd always grown up as a young female being told, like, you're too competitive, you need to take it back a notch. And so when I got in an environment where that was praised, I just fell right into it, and they became like my brothers. And I think that's why it's so natural now working in a football office, because it just feels like I'm one of them, and I'm not seen for male or female. I'm just seen for the work that I provide and that I'm good at what I do. So it's actually really refreshing sometimes to be in that kind of environment where like I can be my competitive self and it's not like unusual.
And so fast forwarding a little bit, so you played basketball, stuck with basketball, played basketball at the next level. You did play somewhere else before coming over to the University of Hawaii. So tell us a little bit about your early collegiate basketball career.
Yeah, so like we talked about earlier, I played soccer and a bunch of different sports growing up. So I needed extra time to develop in basketball. And so I went the JUCO route. Thankfully, right in my backyard, we had one of the top 5 JUCO programs for women's basketball in the country. She saw me play one day at a play day at the school, and she offered me on spot. And at the time, I had D2, other JUCO offers, just things that I would have if I went to JUCO and played, and I was going to have those offers after. So I was like, I'm just going to bet on myself, go JUCO route. And it ended up paying off. I played with our whole starting five went Division One, and so had a great experience there. Kind of learned how to channel my energy in the right places, and just definitely needed that time. So I always tell people I'm pro JUCO, JUCO product here. And yeah, I don't regret anything about that journey. And ultimately, again, it led me to here. So very thankful for that experience.
And we're hanging out with Savannah Reier, Director of Recruiting for the University of Hawai'i football program. All right, so we went the JUCO route. And how did you end up here at the University of Hawai'i?
Yeah, so I got kind of lucky. I was talking to a school in Nashville, and one of their assistant coaches actually took the assistant job here, Coach Courtney Locke. She's now a head Division II coach in Chicago, but she took the job here, and essentially I just ended up coming with her, and it worked out very quickly. My recruiting process with Hawaii was probably 2 weeks long. I started talking to Coach Beeman. She brought me on an official visit, and I committed right when I saw what Hawaii had to offer, just aesthetically. But then once I got around the girls, I was like, this is a done deal. Like, it's a perfect fit for me. And Coach Beeman was exactly what I needed in my later years in college. So it was great. It worked out perfect.
I'm glad you said that. And this is a perfect time, though. We're going to have to take a quick break. But when we come back, I want to ask you all about playing for Coach B, because there's only so much that we see, even in the media, see from the outside. Paul and I talk like highly of her, as everyone else does, all the time. Even last year, it didn't seem like Hawaii was ever really out of being able to win when Coach Beeman's at the helm. So we're going to talk a lot about your time spent in that program when we come back on Wake Up in the Den.
Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ulei Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and our special in-studio guest, Savannah Reier, the Director of Recruiting for the University of Hawai'i football program. All right, but before, as I mentioned earlier, we will talk about football a little later in the show. Before we left off, before our break, we were talking about your time and coming over to play for the Rainbow Wahine basketball program. And specifically, I just want to ask you how it was as a player playing for Coach Beeman, because she seems incredible, like, to everybody and everyone that I know her, met her personally, of course, and then also in the media capacity, but she just seems awesome. And last year is just a true testament. There was a lot of adversity with that program, with a lot of injuries, and lo and behold, we still won. And the Rainbow Wahine did like the best against the eventual NCAA women's basketball champs in LSU. So just tell us about not only Coach Beeman, but also how that season was for you last year when you were actually working on staff as the Director of Player Development. So start off first as a player under Coach Beeman.
For sure. So when I first came in, she seemed like the perfect fit. I was looking for something a little more chill. My first 2 years, I played for a coach who's she's going to be a legendary JUCO coach, but she was extremely loud, loved to yell, and that was what I was used to because I grew up in the South. That's kind of just how they communicate coaching-wise down there. And so when I came to Coach Beeman, I think one of my first practices, she gave me some constructive criticism, and she was like, yeah, you need to do this better. And I looked at her and I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, Sav, don't ever say yes, ma'am to me again. And I was like, okay, like this is definitely different, because if I didn't say yes, ma'am at my old school, it would have been like, on the line, let's go, like we're running. And it was just a difference in communication that I didn't know I needed. I came in being an extremely direct person, and not really knowing that there were other ways to communicate with people that might be more effective. So that's one of the biggest things she taught me as a player, was just not everyone responds to that the same as you. And she was like, I want to challenge you and coach you in a different way and see how much we can get out of you. And I think that was really influential in just my career here, and then just working for her on her staff this past year. it really helped me with the girls and just being able to get through to them and kind of be that positive voice on the sideline with them. But again, like one of the other things I remember about first getting here with her was she would pull us into her office and say, "How do you feel that you should be coached?" I tell her, like, if you yell at me, like, you're gonna get the most out of me. And she was like, "Sav, we've talked about this before. Like, I'm not gonna yell. I know how. I know what type of program you came from, and again, at that program, we won 70 games. We only lost 4 games in my career.
Wow.
So, like, in my head, I'm like we almost won a JUCO national championship. Like, I know I can be yelled at. Like, that's kind of how I've always been talked to just as a player. And so,
Mhm.
like, to have someone that genuinely cared about you outside of the game and wanted to talk to you like a normal human on the court too, like, that's something I didn't know I needed. But again, like, the amount of care she has for her players and just that she brings that to the court. She never holds anything like against you, even if you screw up off the court. Like, she's never that person. And so I definitely needed her more than I knew. And I'm so thankful to have played for her. And then to come back on her staff, it was really full circle. Just because I think my senior year was COVID 2020. And so
Mhm.
we were playing in the semifinals of the Big West tournament and our season got cut short.
That's right.
And so when I came back on staff, it was just like, okay, this feels like it's bigger than just like me working a job. It felt unfinished for me, my time here in Hawaii. So when I came back, it was like to end up winning a Big West championship with that team. Like, it kind of completed that, gave me the closure I needed probably to move on from basketball, knowing that I eventually didn't want to coach. And so for her to give me another opportunity to win a championship and to come back and represent the state, like, I can't thank her enough. She's been one of the biggest influencers in my career, and again, why I'm where I'm at. So I'm super thankful to her for sure.
And going back to like as a player, tell us a little bit about that. I completely forgot that, yeah, you were part of that team where, hey, it seems like you could have won that year as a player, and then for everything to just come to a halt. Talk to or tell everyone about what was like kind of the emotions that you went through. And I'm sure it's not a memory that you enjoy reliving, but I think it would be interesting for everyone to know how it was going through that point in your playing career and feeling like, yeah, you'll never be able to do this again.
Yeah, I think that obviously at the time it was extremely hard. No one knew in the country
Mhm.
or in the world what was going on. We hadn't experienced that, as a community. So there was really no guidelines to how you're supposed to deal with that. And then being a senior and your season ending like that, it definitely was a hard moment. But I'm really thankful again for that full circle moment of coming back on staff. I think there's a reason um, that happened, and I think one of those reasons was the closure that it gave me just from even that year. Because again, there's no one telling you like how to handle it. There were no jobs. There were no, like,
Mhm.
you go into a world of like, okay, I'm adulting now, and adulting's hard. I figured that out. But you go into a world, there's no jobs, no one's hiring. I don't know if I should be at home with my family or if I should stay here. I remember like the first thing I heard was that all the toilet paper is going to be gone on island. And I'm like trying to make a decision. Do I fly home or to Alabama, or do I stay in my home that has become my home essentially? And like, it was just a really hard decision to make at 21 years old.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it was definitely a tough time. I think that, I've worked through kind of that, and I'm just thankful. I know everything happens for a reason. So I've been able to work through that, but I think a lot of athletes from that class still struggle with that. Unfortunately, across the country, I
Mhm.
see, on social media all the time, people talking about their experience during those years. And so I'm just thankful that I got that closure I needed and can move forward.
What were your guys' thoughts though going through last season with the Rainbow Wahine basketball program and going through all those injuries? I mean, what the things that you can share, what were some of the, motivational words that either Coach Beeman or yourself kind of told the young women to really keep them up, and even being down, what was it, like 15 points or so in that championship game? I mean, what was said in the locker room, and then ultimately lifting that team up to win the Big West Tournament Championship?
Yeah, I think that, like you referred to, the injuries were a big deal. I think at the beginning of the year, the team was trying to find something to play for. Like, obviously, they all love basketball, but it can be a very strenuous process of becoming a back-to-back champion. And
Hmm.
so, like, that process can become a little bit um, boring almost, I would say. Like, everyone expects you to just love the grind and, like, day in, day out, just work. And
Hmm.
when you don't have something that you're playing for, if you don't know your why, um, I think that it can become just kind of an over and over kind of thing where you just go in and you go through the motions. And I think Coach Beeman did a really good job about like finding your why. And so we worked on that for months and months on end to help these players find, why am I playing and who am I doing this for? And then when the injuries happened, I think even more so, like with Jovi, Jackie, Liv, Avery, like all those people going down, everyone has strong ties to them. You spend every
Hmm.
single day with them. So it's a lot easier to say, I'm going to play for Jovi, I'm going to play for Avery, I'm going to play for Jackie, I'm going to play for Liv because they're my best friend or they're my literal sister.
Yeah.
And so I think that was kind of a turning point, as sad as it was in the time. Like those four that were injured had such an influential role in us actually winning the tournament because they ended up giving a lot of our team their why. And so, everything happens for a reason. And as, you know, sucky as injuries can be, like it was just a really crucial time when they happened. And so I think you really saw a change in kind of the mentality towards winning a second championship.
And we're hanging out with Savannah Reier, Director of Recruiting for the University of Hawaii football program. But right now, just reminiscing about her time with the Rainbow Wahine basketball program. All right. How was that experience, though, going to the NCAA tournament and then, as I mentioned earlier, playing the eventual NCAA women's basketball champs in LSU? And of course, these stars, but it seems like of college basketball right now, men or women, they are like the true celebrities at the moment in Angel Reese, Flaujae. I mean, tell us about that experience and playing that caliber of a team.
Yeah, I think I might have been one of the most excited to go back to the South, honestly.
Yeah.
And obviously to play LSU, like such a cool opponent to get to play. A lot of our girls on the team had never been to the South.
Hmm.
I was excited for them to experience the food more than anything.
What did
But
you recommend they try?
I'm like, you have to try fried catfish. The collard greens just hit different down there. Like you have to understand, like the food there is just out of this world. Um, but again, like getting to play such a high caliber opponent and that experience for a team that is returning every single player except for two, obviously two great leaders that we had graduate, but to return and get to play
Hmm.
the defending national champions now. Um, like that was a great experience, I think, for the girls and just being in that environment where it's sold out and you have fans just screaming and getting to see that like this is the pinnacle of women's basketball right now, as you referred to. It was such a great experience, I think, for everyone involved. So definitely one of the highlights of the year.
And, we're going to tout ourselves a little bit. I believe the Rainbow Wahine did like the best against LSU in that entire tournament. I think you guys like held them to like the least amount of points or something. I forget the stats, but we're
Yeah.
like, hey. And then I think when they played Michigan, then the next round, and then
I remember texting you
yeah, the
saying,
deficit was less against the Rainbow Wahine, and we were like, okay, so we're better than Michigan. All right,
Exactly.
Right.
that's what we're gonna take it as, that we're better than Michigan. Okay, so before we kind of change it up a little bit, coming up a little later with football, I just want to ask you though, before we take our next break, because your degree is in sociology, right? So you have your bachelor's and master's are both in sociology.
So my master's is in equity and diversity in education.
So tell us a little bit about what made you want to study sociology and then go ahead and get your master's now.
For sure. So sociology is the study of human behavior, and I'm always one of the most observant in the room. I'm a pretty curious person, and I like to understand why people are the way they are. So it seemed like the perfect fit for me just to be able to go into that. I used to think I wanted to be a lawyer. I quickly figured out that was not for me, but sociology kind of offered me that curiosity to be able to explore those different things that I enjoyed while playing basketball. Because ultimately, like, yes, we're student athletes, but basketball for me was like, oh, I get to play basketball at the University of Hawaii and represent a state that is like so amazing and so culture filled, like something I had never seen before. And so um, ultimately I chose sociology because that was the most interesting to me outside of basketball. If they had a basketball major, I would have majored in that.
I feel like I'm sure that's Paul too.
Right?
He probably would have, as much as he loves sports media, he probably would have majored in basketball
Right.
too.
Correct.
Like the study of basketball and just the depths of it. But yeah, so then I went and got my master's in equity and diversity, which is another topic that is obviously very prevalent in the world right now. But I saw a class when I was looking at the catalog for each master's, and it was something about females in education. And one of the topics was the lack of education for females in the world. And I didn't realize the percentage of females around the world that don't have access to education. And so that was something, when I saw it, I was like, I really want to look into that and just kind of understand, but also just be better at when I am in diverse groups of people, being able to relate and lead if I need to. And so it was a great decision. I learned a lot, and it kind of woke me up to some things that I didn't realize were happening because, again, like in America, we have access to education and all these different things that we kind of forget that, we're blessed to have. So it was definitely a good experience and helped continue to just grow me professionally, I think, too.
Yeah, and it definitely prepares you for what you're doing now, which we
Right.
will talk about. But we need to take a quick break and get a traffic report as we are joined by the Director of Recruiting for the University of Hawai'i football program, Savannah Reier. But we'll be right back on Wake Up in the Den.
Back to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to all of you, the beautifulest of all the beautiful people. It's Wake Up in the Den, Ku'ulei Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and the Director of Recruiting for the University of Hawai'i football program, Savannah Reier. She's hanging out with us for the entire show. So we talked a lot about your time in Alabama, coming over to the University of Hawai'i, playing basketball, working for the women's basketball program, and now in your current position as the Director of Recruiting for football. Just tell us a little bit about how that ended up happening, like the process, or did you reach out to Timmy when you knew it was available, other way around? Like, how did that happen and you found yourself working in Division I football?
For sure. So I started, I was a GA, a graduate assistant at the University of Nevada, Reno. And so Coach Chang and Matt Chon, Silas Clapham, they were all at Nevada for a short time. We crossed paths. I had never met Coach Chang at Nevada. So when I mentioned it the first time, he was like, wait, you were in Reno? He's like, I love Reno, but I love Hawaii more.
You better. Not just kidding.
Right? You better. But yeah, so I met them. I had hung out with Matt Chon and a couple of the guys that are on staff. And so we had just developed a friendship. And when I ended up coming back, we had always joked about, like, it would be cool if I came over to the football side and that type of thing, but never thought it would actually develop into what it was. And we all kind of built this trusting relationship of just good friends and helping each other out in the department, which is super common with Hawaii athletics. Everyone kind of helps everyone. And so that's a really nice thing to be a part of because you get to develop those kind of connections and relationships. But I knew that the Director of Recruiting position was probably opening. And so we had been in communication, Matt Chon and I talked to Coach Beeman early in the conference season about just kind of my goals and this football job opening. And she was like, Sav, you have my blessing as long as you're in the department. She's like, as long as we don't lose you to anyone else, you can take it. Like, it's all good. Go for it. Like, I would love to see you kind of follow out what you really have dreamed of. And that type of thing. So I got her blessings first. And then I started the process of just throughout the end of our season basketball, I was just talking with Matt and kind of understanding the role. Um, so while I've only been in it 5 months, I was kind of being trained a little bit like towards the end of our basketball season. But Coach Chang basically gave Matt the go. He said, if you think she can do it, like, let's go. And so that was really reassuring, is like he trusts his staff. And um, he also mentioned, like, make sure Coach Beeman's okay with it. Like, we need to make sure we stay on her good side. Like, I don't want to be on her bad side, which honestly, she doesn't have a bad side. But just the consideration from him, I think, was even more reassuring, because that's the type of people I want to work for. People that are considerate, that they do support women's sports, and that type of thing. So that's how I kind of ended up in the role. It was a very quick transition. I think I got back from the NCAA tournament and was working within 2 days with football, just because we had a lot of stuff that had to be planned. So it's kind of been a whirlwind of a 5 months, but it's been a good experience so far.
And fortunately, yes, you got the blessing of Coach Beeman, but you didn't necessarily get the blessing of everyone. You know, it was a little bit of, hey, why are you like leaving a women's program to go work for the guys and all this type of stuff, like we talked about a little bit at the alumni event. So just tell our audience a little kind of like what you had to deal with during that transition. Fortunately, no one within the program, but elsewhere.
Right. So like you said, it was no one within the department. Everyone has been super supportive, and essentially just glad that I'm staying within the department. So I'm thankful to have people that value me and kind of what I do. But yeah, I definitely got some pushback from outside sources of just not understanding why I would leave a women's program to go work for a male-dominated sport. But in my eyes, I saw it as still continuing to advance the jobs and just like the opportunities for females, especially in football. It's the same. We're all working together to kind of improve the sisterhood. And I think that there's a lot of things I can do on the football side to help programs within the department. And we've already talked about fundraising opportunities and teaming up and all of that, just because I'm on this side now. And Coach Chang is all for, obviously, we're putting on sisterhood event and all of that. But I think that it becomes even more prevalent when you have a female on your staff. You're just even more aware of just the sisterhood in general, and just like how you can support them better and that type of thing, because they want to learn, they want to grow. And being in my position, I'm able to kind of push forward the boundaries for females in sports. And so I did get pushback, but again, no one that honestly I was going to let hinder my advancement in the sport and just my professional career. So I'm really thankful that the people that matter most to me supported me. And so it's great to kind of just see that a lot of that pushback I got like has turned into praise and support of just like, okay, I'm starting to understand more now, and just seeing more females in football, that type of thing. So definitely grateful.
Yeah, because people, it's for like the greater good, right? You
Right.
have like younger women, and even that you're around a lot of the college athletes are not that much older or far removed from being one of those either student athletes or just a student. And to see someone that is able to work in Division I football, I mean, even at any level, but Division I, right? We're so used to just, it's male dominated staff most of the time. Even when I kind of browse through other staffs within the Mountain West, I'm like, wow, there's really not any like women, especially in a position like you'll have like the assistant or something, right? But in such an important position like the director of recruiting, I think it's huge, and it's so inspirational to the next generation. Like, hey, I can work here, I can do a good job. And you're right, I have to double down on what you said, that Coach Chang trusted Matt to like, all right, if you think she can do the job, then we'll give her a shot. Like, he didn't even really bat an eye. Like, he just trusted Matt because they've been together since Nevada and brought you along. And seems like you're doing just fine. But tell us exactly what is your day-to-day, and maybe, I guess, in 3 parts, because, there's always like the dead period. So what do you do during the dead period when you really can't be recruiting? And what do you guys do, like the official visits and whatnot? So how has like the first, what did you say, 5 months or so has been in this position for you?
For sure. So we'll start with dead period just because we're in one right now. So the past month I took some time off, which was very much needed, just not having the break in between basketball and football. So July, for most of the month, it's a dead period, and you can't have recruits on campus. And so that's a large part of my role, is just helping host them when they are able to come on campus. So during the dead period, I'm working on just a lot of the more logistic sides of things, just reimbursement, stuff like that, more of the office administrative role, which I don't mind because it's a little bit slowed down and a lot easier than just putting out social energy all the time. So it's been nice to kind of just chill out and get prepared for season. And then in season, I'll do our Saturday game day visits. So we'll host recruits on Saturday game days, and we'll plan kind of events, photo shoots, all those different things, get them on the sideline and get them around the team. So I'll be the kind of main person planning that. And then obviously in December and then early June, end of May, we do official visits, and that's kind of my time to really like shine. I'm extremely busy during that time.
I'm the star here.
Right? I'm like, everyone listen to me. No, but I plan everything. So everything from travel, hotel, food reservations, getting the coaches where they need to be on time, basically the whole thing I plan. So it's a lot of responsibility because you have people that are looking to have great experiences on their official visits, and you're kind of the person spearheading that. So during those times, I'm very busy, but it's really fun. I think that my mom, shout out mom, really prepared me for that side of things. She's an amazing host. She's in the food and kind of restaurant / small business industry. And so watching her growing up, being able to host people naturally, and just how she did it, and how polite she was, and just the way she was able to make people feel special. I really learned a lot from her doing that. And so the ability to bring that to the program when they didn't have kind of that presence of, there's people on our staff, most of them are great at having conversations and recruiting and doing all of that, but to have a female touch, honestly, on things, I think has helped elevate just our visits and stuff in general, because there's things that I think of that maybe a guy might not think of. An example would be, we had like the marquee letters and the balloons at a couple of our visits, and they walked in and the guys were like, where'd we get this? I'm like, why is it here? And I'm like, it's just a nice little touch, like for meals. And they were like, this looks great. But they had no idea like what goes into getting, they're like, where do you even find like this? And I'm like, it's not hard. Like, you just go on Instagram. But I think adding that touch and just being able to bring something different to the table has really helped our recruiting efforts. So I'm just thankful that I'm in the position to be able to kind of impact in that way.
Yeah, and it's like, it's something you don't notice. Like recruits, it might not stand out to them per se, but it's all like subconscious, right? Like, you're like, wow, that's cool. And that's cool, little things. And then if the parents come, and then the moms, if you impress the moms, that'll always be key too. And
that's
then I'm sure
formula.
Yeah, I'm sure like if they meet you too, they'll be like, hey, I want to, like, that's cool. Like that there is a female on this staff. Like, I'd feel more comfortable with sending my son here. Like, this seems like they're really diverse here and giving women a chance. That's all I would think as if I were a mom. I'd be like, this seems pretty like a good staff to be at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds like a really, really cool experience overall. And I think you bring up a really good point about like a woman's touch, somebody or something that a lot of times the details, the little details that aren't thought of. And like you mentioned, I think that goes overlooked a lot of times. We also, Ku, you and I talk a lot about representation here on this show and all that. I'm curious, was there anyone who was an inspiration to you wanting this role? Like, did anybody put this on your radar, like a woman early on in your life?
I think that I had seen just like on Twitter ladies taking jobs in football, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anyone specific. I think a lot of people played roles in kind of getting me to where I am. I think having parents that supported me being kind of a strong female and just encouraging me to go for things like that really impacted me feeling comfortable enough to even try, because I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of young females out there that won't even consider going into roles like this because they weren't encouraged from a young age. And so I'm really blessed to have that support system and just people all throughout my life that have made me feel like I'm in the right place, and that I deserve to be here. And so I don't know if there's a specific female in football right now that like kind of spearheaded that for me, but I think just coming from the background that I do kind of put me where I am for sure.
Feels like we have like the similar type of family and dads. My
Yeah.
dad's like, that's why I'm like doing this too, because at a young age, right, he would always be like, you can do anything the boys can do. Like, don't,
Right.
because I was the only child and I'm a girl, so he had no sons. He's like, you can do it. Like, all, like, I'm a winner. I'm a winner. Just grow up like all that, like repeating that all the time. And yeah, you're right. It's just, it kind of sticks with you throughout the whole time. And then, like you said, you were always around the tough, like, environment and whatnot. So going into working with all men, it's like not intimidating because you're just used to it from when you were playing on the football team to now. You're like, it's just a job. Like I'm just here to do my best and to do a great job.
Yeah, and I think one of the stories I can remember with my dad specifically is we'd be on the way, like in first grade, to my basketball games. And it was like his way of affirmations because, there's like apps now that are, I am strong,
Yeah.
all those things. But he would play Number One Spot by Ludacris. And in the song, Ludacris says, I'm coming for that number one spot. And I would be screaming it in the back of his Suburban with him. We'd just be bumping it all the way. And so, like, from a young age, I had that kind of mentality of, like, I'm coming for greatness and not necessarily, like, having to win every single time, which I hate to lose.
Mhm.
But to have that competitive edge. And, like, I would go into these games and just ball out on, like, first graders. And all the girls around me are, like, playing with their pigtails and that type of stuff. And I'm, like, getting buckets on people. And I think that really, like, when I look back at just all these moments in my life, like, one of those moments was we listened to that song every single game. And what he says in that song is just it's so on brand for me. And so I think just, like, all those little moments led to, where I am today.
I love it. All right, we got to take a quick break as we are joined by the Director of Recruiting for the University of Hawai'i football program, Savannah Reier. But got to step aside really quick, and we'll be back to wrap things up on Wake Up in the Den.
Back to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ule Agbayani on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ule Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and Savannah Reier, the Director of Recruiting for the University of Hawai'i football program. All right, going to have a little fun just to wrap things up. I did want to point out that we have, those of you guys that are going to watch on YouTube, we have the WWE belt right here, and you can't see it. We'll post it on social media, but it's even down to that it's sisterhood on the bottom. Savannah has one behind her, to which she will take back to the University of Hawaii women's basketball team. So we got to give a shout out to one of the biggest University of Hawaii women's basketball fans out there who's blessed us with these amazing WWE custom Rainbow Wahine sisterhood belts. Our friend Ben.
Ben, we love Ben. I was telling them earlier that Ben was low-key my hype man during the Big West Championships this season, because I like to be the hype woman on the bench. I've always been that way, just like hyping the girls up. And every time he sat across from us, when I was screaming, he was screaming. If he was screaming, I was screaming. It was like the best thing ever. And definitely a top memory for myself and all of our players on our team. We appreciate you, Ben.
So again, you guys will see it on our YouTube and it'll make the rounds. Like I said, this one belt is going back to the team and you're going to see it throughout the season. You'll see it here on the show. It'll be a staple here in studio. We will have a photo opportunity only at the Sisterhood Social coming up on August 19th. So there's a plug there. Make sure you sign up, get your ladies welcome, and you'll learn from the UH football coaching staff, get to meet Savannah and hang out. And it's just a good time for the ladies to feel like the most important people at the football stadium. So it's going to be a really, really fun time. And how much are you looking forward to this upcoming season? This will be your first season really on staff.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We had a staff meeting yesterday going over fall camp and just kind of our schedule and the grind and everything that it's going to be. And I'm just very blessed and thankful to be in this opportunity, in this position to be able to impact and share our program with the state and the world, really. So I'm very excited for my first season.
All right, so a couple of fun questions as we only have a few more minutes left. So besides, obviously, Alabama and Hawaii, are there any sports that you just follow for fun, whether college or professional, and what teams do you cheer for?
Yeah, I actually love college softball. Again, I think growing up, going with my dad and my mom and my little sister to Alabama softball games, I've become a super huge fan of watching softball. Didn't love playing it because I felt like it was too slow for me. But I love watching college softball. The College World Series is one of my favorite times of the year. I just love the energy and passion that they play with, and I think that they're continuing to advance women in sports as well on that side of things. So that's kind of my special sport that I enjoy.
Were you or your family, do you remember when Hawaii had beat Alabama with that upset in the Women's College World Series? Like, I forget which round it was, and this was probably like 10 years ago. So that's why I'm thinking if your family were watching and they beat Alabama off that J-Rod home run. I don't know if you guys were watching at that time, but it's kind of funny.
I vaguely remember it. But a quick funny story about that. One of my first all staff meetings across the athletic department, we had to like introduce ourselves as new staff. And I said I was from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I said, "Roll Tide, go Bows." And then I winked at Timmy because it was one of the first things I said in one of our football staff meetings. And he was like, "What?" But I said that in the all staff meeting, and Coach Bob from softball stands up and he's like, "We beat y'all 10 years ago."
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, he put me on blast in the middle of the staff meeting. And I was like, I guess I kind of deserved that.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm a softball fan. And then he saw me later upstairs and he was like, "I was just joking with you." And I was like, "It's still Roll Tide though." But it was super funny.
I was just joking, but not really.
But not really.
We'll remember that one forever.
Right.
And I think the gripe that a lot of us here had was like how the broadcast, and it seems like it's still relevant. The broadcast always seems to be biased for the other team, except like everyone's against Hawaii, which is cool. We're used to it. But I remember that particular broadcast. We're like, sheesh, they're just not giving us any chance. It's all about Roll Tide on this broadcast. All right. So you've been in Hawaii for a good amount of time now. What's your kind of favorite food here?
I would have to say this is really basic, but I love a good chili rice bowl. I didn't grow up eating rice a lot. We ate potatoes. Like, I don't think I'd had as much white rice. Probably my first week here, I had more white rice in 1 week than all growing up in Alabama. But I love chili. It's like my thing. My mom makes fire chili. And so when I saw that you could get that at restaurants just like casually, I was like, I'm ordering this every time. And so that's kind of my guilty food pleasure.
That's funny. We're like the same person. You can ask Paul. I talk about like loving because we do a lot of high school football broadcasts, and a lot of the snack, like the schools, like concessions always have chili rice, and I'm like obsessed. I just love getting chili rice all the time.
Right? It just
like
hits
my
different.
thing. That's so funny. I'm like, we're the same person because I love it so much. All right. Just about a minute here. We'll give you the last words.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Just the opportunity to share about my experiences, and hopefully there's some little girls out there listening, maybe with their dad in the car this morning. But I'd just love to say, like, I appreciate everyone that's been a part of my journey so far, and just the state of Hawaii for welcoming me with open arms. I couldn't imagine this for myself, and so I'm just thankful to everyone that's played a role in getting me here. And go Bows.
And go Bows. And pack the stadium.
And
We got
pack
that
the
ticket
stadium.
promotion.
Yeah, there is a ticket promotion. If you buy season tickets, you get 2 free keiki tickets. So go out and buy those season tickets. It's going to be a great atmosphere, and we can't wait to see you at our home opener against Stanford.
Ooh, don't forget that's a Friday, and campus is closed. So it'll be fun. All right, we got to start wrapping it up, but this episode obviously will be available on demand, and you can watch it on YouTube later. Thank you, Savannah, for joining us today.
Thank you,
We'll invite you back
guys.
maybe mid-season. Well, for Paul Brecht, I'm Kule Agbayani, and for Savannah Reier, mahalo for listening. It's been Wake Up in the Den. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.